Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon. I hope who so far is having a good time at the conference. All right, glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm super impressed, and so I'm honored to be on stage today, and a little surprised to be moderating with a really impressive group of people. Eyal, Alex, and Thomas, I've spent a bit of time getting to know, and we're lucky because they represent a range of investment perspectives from the very early ideation stage to the more mature business stage. And so it'll be a good way to get a range of perspectives on this topic of investment in PropTech startups. But I want to let each of them take a minute to introduce themselves. Maybe you can start, Alex. Let us know a little bit about what you're doing.
Eyal, thank you very much. I work for a company called Blackprint Partners, and we do invest in PropTech companies. We have as our core product at the moment a PropTech Accelerator, which is the only accelerator on the German market, focusing only on real estate companies which have a digital business model. And we are kind of the pioneers in the German scene, and as we discussed a couple of minutes ago, we're looking at the UK scene because we learned a lot, as you are a little bit ahead of us in terms of what the technology is and how you would deal with technology companies and to finance them.
Thomas?
Hi, thank you for inviting us. At Impulse Partner, we are a startup accelerator. We specialize in construction tech and PropTech, originally in France but expanding in the UK. And our model is slightly different from other accelerators, but we got all our financing from large corporate partners, so the Bouygues, Saint-Gobain, Vinci, or large insurance companies. And we work with more than 200 startups to help them develop business with our corporate partners. And through the business development, obviously, they get some financing, either from investment funds or corporate partners, corporate ventures.
Best for last.
Sure. So hi. Well, you're last then. So I'm Eyal. I'm investment director in Beringea. I guess my personal interest in the sector was my previous role was I was corporate development director at Countrywide for about 3 years. So I have very personal and intimate knowledge of the challenges of startups have collaborating with large organizations. Beringea is a UK and US based VC fund. We manage over $600 million between both funds. And we sometimes call ourselves early growth investors. So we invest £1 to £5 million into growing businesses. Where our threshold, we want to see at least £1 million of revenue. So we will get in, we're going to go a little bit later, sometimes Series A, sometimes B, sometimes C, sometimes seed. But we really want to see a revenue traction before we get involved.
So you get a sense of the range, and just for reference, Concrete VC that have created is a partnership between Seed Camp, Starwood Capital, and JLL, and we invest at kind of the seed stage, purely focused on PropTech. So I guess let me kick it off. So what I'm going to do is ask a few questions that I think will be of general interest, and then about halfway through, open it up to the floor, and would love to hear what you guys want to know. So the basic question everybody wants to know from the VC, sort of, in the PropTech space, what are you looking for? Let's start with you, Al.
Sure. So I think because we're slightly more growth driven, we're really looking first of all for the revenue traction, to see a real business generating revenues. If it's profitable, even better, but that's the kind of metrics we look for. Thematically, I look at different kinds of businesses, but I think the two most interesting markets in my mind right now have to do around maintenance and property management of maintenance. I sometimes refer to it as a €500 washing machine problem, where you're a landlord, washing machine breaks, you get a bill for €500, and you know very well that the washing machine only costs 150 quid for a Beko one. Where does the rest of the money get lost along the way? It's a huge market all over the world, and I think there's a lot of innovation technology that can help it make it more efficient. And the other market is around mortgages, and the whole just mortgage market and how to bring more technology, more innovation to what they do. I think Habito and Trussell are doing fantastic work spearheading this effort in the UK, but I'd love to see more innovation around the mortgage market.
Great. Thomas?
I think in our case, and the specifics of our business model is that we are looking for early stage innovative companies who have a great potential to generate disruptions in the model of larger organizations. So like generating cost savings. So it could be on maintenance, management, but also within social housing, all the niches of real estate. We have very large organizations that are owning or operating very large assets, and small innovative solutions can have a great impact and can be deployed very, very rapidly on a very large scale, and therefore have a great impact. So,
Okay, can I go a little deeper on the question with you then? So with your corporate partnerships, have they made any specific requests, like we want to see startups that do X?
no, because they are not able to,
Okay,
to formulate this way.
all right.
But sometimes they are able to formulate their pain points. Like I have issues with vacancies, with payment recovery, or with maintenance. And then the startup will transform those pain points into an innovative offer. So that's really where we have a value creation. And the more the startup is early, the bigger the value can be generated, because we can tune the startup towards the exact need of the large organization.
Okay,
But it's really B2B oriented in this case.
great, thanks. And then Alex, you guys run a model that is both at the really early stage and you're also planning to invest at the later stage. So talk to us a little bit about, share what sort of stuff you're looking for in that space.
Yeah, I would start with the Accelerator program, which is backed by a big corporation, 10 corporations, the rock stars of the German industry, which finance it, and on their behalf we take a stake in the company that we help in their development. On a broader scene, the German PropTech scene has just started to develop in 2015, and that was driven by a change in law when all of a sudden the landlord needed to employ the brokers and pay them by themselves, which was different in the past. And all of a sudden you had a PropTech scene around this, but this now is past history, and there are other more important areas, hidden areas, where we need these technology companies to evolve. So the question of our corporate companies was, in which other fields do you see technology growing? And we would look at PropTechs which don't do the regular stuff, which is obvious from the outside, but which have a little bit more insight to the real estate industry, see inefficiencies and target these. And many of these inefficiencies are really, really hard to deal with because you need insiders to help you. To give you one example, like property management is very intransparent in Germany. I don't know how in the UK you have probably more data on anything, but you don't have it in Germany at all. And so this would be a typical business case which we find really interesting if they base it on a very solid technology which is scalable and where we can open the right doors.
Okay. So let me dig into that a little bit. So I guess my observation, having worked across a number of sectors and now being focused on the property technology sector, is that here relationships matter more. They matter more than in media. They matter more than in local information or ticketing, for example. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of driving those relationships for the startups and what they mean in this space?
Yeah, I think you have a very valid point there. What we've seen is that when a startup comes up to an established company and pitches, he's not focusing on the MVP, but he's telling the big story. But the old guy senses immediately that these three guys with a computer will not be able to deliver what he wasn't able to deliver after 30 years of business. So there's a mismatch, and you come in a sales situation where they don't want to talk to you and where they don't want to be the first, like a pilot customer. And that's where programs, I would assume yours and mine, set in and set the scene and say, A, you as a middle manager, you have air cover from your boss, he finances the program, he really wants you to understand what the technologies are. B, this is not a sales pitch, but we're kind of here as a partner. We want your insight, your expertise, your access to whatever resource it is that you have in your the company. On the other hand, we let you see what new technologies are out there, how these people work, where they need you, where they might not need you. And all of a sudden, these people come around the table and sit on the side of the entrepreneur and start developing together what the MVP is and start developing the bigger project.
Okay. And then, Thomas, you've been running your program successfully in Paris for a number of years. And so share with us that are compared to you, sort of newer in the space, where do you see your ability to kind of create benefits with those relationships for the startups?
It's really, again, in the relationship.
Yep.
The technology is important, but it's really the team that matters. and it's the capacity of the team to connect, and it's both teams, it's the team of the startup and the team of the corporate. It's their ability to reach to each other and together to build something together. Very often we have large corporates who are not open enough to innovative startups, and innovative startups who are seeing the big picture but are not considering the first 2 or 3 steps that they need to convince in the corporate. Okay. So it's really based on relationship, okay, and trying to do a small but very fast pilot projects, okay, that can just trigger interest, trigger a corporate venture, interest from those external investors, and then this is the beginning of the story.
Great, thanks. So Eyal, you guys aren't necessarily just PropTech focused, and you've got experience across a whole range of categories. What's your perspective on this?
I'll just touch on the last point you said on the triggering, and it's really interesting because again, my experience working with startups and big organizations, they face a number of big barriers. One of them is finding out who to speak to, right? So you want to talk to someone at Sony, you don't know who to talk to. And I think actually being, and you guys are saying, is once you work with those organizations, you already have someone to talk to. Yeah. Number 2, an organization will have 20,000 people. So even if you found someone to talk to and the organization says they want to innovate, it doesn't mean that the right business unit will see the value in what you are doing. Then you have to go through procurement, which in big organizations is really long and very complicated, right? I have this startup that doesn't have ISO 27001, and some organizations say you need to have it. And then you need to integrate into those massive information systems and the program there's so many interfaces that need to happen that actually having companies like you really helps those startups being able to just learn how to work with a big enterprise.
Okay, that's helpful. And so I guess that sort of touches on a point of, from the later stage investment, and so I'll ask Eyal to start with this question, but at a later stage, clearly you're looking for a bunch of sort of steps of traction, yeah, that would merit you getting involved, whereas at the earlier stage, probably we're all looking for the right people that we think are going to see, face, and make decisions around those pivot moments that they encounter, that all startups encounter. So at the later stage, kind of what do you want to see in a startup? And I, if you would share it with the audience from the perspective of, startups in the audience. How many here are startups? Okay, great. Wow. So what should they be preparing for as they kind of build their company so that when they come to this, let's say you guys are starting at sort of Series A level, that they have these things knocked down?
So I think that, the main things would be, I'd say, product traction and management. And the first 2 are a bit more, I would say, can be influenced by the founders. Management, they are who they are. But when we get involved, we don't want to take product risks. So we want to see an existing product that is already built. We want to see the product market fit. So this is when we say £1 million of traction, we pull the number out of thin air, right? It can be €1 million or €1 million chefs, it doesn't really matter. But this means that if someone is willing to pay me £1 million for buying these earphones, I have a product that the market actually wants to buy from me. Lastly is management, and I think management is trickier. I think we need to, like the management, think that they're doing a good job and think that they know what they're doing. In most cases, especially in PropTech needs to, again, and this is almost all startups we see have attached in the B2B sphere, we want to see domain expertise. So if the managers don't have it themselves, they need to bring someone from the industry that actually has the domain expertise and can know and speak the language, right? If you're trying to build a new method of construction, you need to bring someone to the construction world who will want to buy this product and explain to you how to sell this product. Because otherwise, and I'll just give a small example of what I mean by the lack of domain expertise. I see many young 23-year-olds coming up with amazing apps to solve the problem of letting in London, because that is a problem they face themselves. But because they don't have domain expertise in the world of letting and what does it actually mean to let a property and being a landlord or being a property manager, they aren't solving a problem for their ultimate client, the client who is going to pay them. So that's it.
That's fair. So I guess let me take that question of what do you want to see in a company, and realizing that at the early stages it's probably mostly team, but I guess in your perspective from the startups somehow that have successfully graduated from your programs, What are the characteristics of the ones that you see getting that corporate partnership, getting that investment? What are similarities between them?
Actually, most of them comes from the large corporate organization. It's people who spend maybe 10 years in those large corporates. Then they decided to opt out and to be more entrepreneurial. But actually they have an excellent knowledge of how it works. They have an excellent capability to connect at the high level with their clients. And they are becoming VIPs. And they are mainly discussing with chairman or president of potential clients.
Yep.
So
Okay.
that's the ideal model.
Okay. And Alex, is there in what you guys are doing? Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeking there?
Yeah, I think it's three elements that founders need to bring to the table. One, they need to understand that it's not only about the technology and their idea, but also about the link to the industry itself. It might be different in other industries where you don't need someone who owns or operates a building, but we feel that especially in real estate, you need to talk to the old guys at some point. So network matters. Secondly, they need to have the capability to listen and be open to critics. We've found that the teams that really absorb feedback, once they have the candid feedback from the industry and deal with it, are more successful than the other ones. And finally, that goes along with it, they need to be ready to work with partners. And what we've seen in the financing of these companies is that they change from I'm just getting someone who gives me money to a lot of small strategic partners. Because as the attention for PropTech grows in Germany, more grown-up entrepreneurs are willing to give their share of the financing to these companies. And the more ambassadors, so to say, you have, the better it is. And you see these companies that set it up really well, that get their ducks in a row, have good documentation, are a little bit grown up beyond the just founded stage. Use these financees as their ambassadors and grow faster.
Okay, fantastic. Emily, where are we on time? 15 minutes. Okay, great. So let's open it up.
Taylor,
to the
there are
audience.
some questions
great.
coming from the screen. I cannot read them, but I see this.
I didn't bring my glasses. Let's see. Okay, so starting at the top. So traction benchmark, I think we covered that a little bit. I can read it. Traction benchmark, I think we covered that a little bit. Can I get a show of hands for who wants to hear more on traction and benchmarks? Okay, not too many yet. So messaging and market positioning. I think this is an interesting one, ahead of product and service launch. So looking at the early stages, I guess Alex and Thomas, can you talk to us about messaging and in advance of launch? Like, what are you seeing work better or worse with the teams that you're working with?
We've seen a lot of teams who launch and then will completely redefine their positioning, their messaging, and what they've been doing for the first year has nothing to do with what they will be doing afterwards.
Okay. Is
But
that a good thing or a bad thing?
They still exist after 3 years, so it's,
Okay.
it's probably a good thing.
Okay.
And at least in France, this is the case. There is a tendency to not to attract too much investment at the beginning, and especially because it's difficult in France to attract investment.
Yeah.
And to sell services and to use that first year to find your way on the market.
Okay.
And this is somehow accepted by the market. That,
Okay.
that you don't need to be extremely clear in what you propose. But then when you scale up, you'll have to be clear.
Okay. And would you say there's a difference between the B2C and the B2B market in that challenge? Alex, what are your thoughts there?
Yes, we can help much more on the B2B front.
Okay.
Because there you have less touch points, but they're more intensive. The B2C ideas that we see always require a lot of marketing money, marketing power, and this is what you usually don't have for such a niche as the PropTech industry.
Okay.
So we encourage people to focus on B2B.
Yep.
And I just saw a question, if I may pull this in, I have the choice to either raise money from friends or go to an accelerator. I really like the family and friends question, because I've met entrepreneurs who said, I don't particularly want family and friends because A, I want the market test if someone at arm's length gives me money, which is also kind of a proof of concept, and B, I don't want my family and friends tell me that I should go back to the office when I have a drink on Friday night. And secondly, if it's about the accelerator program, I'd say yes, because we operate one. But what all the operators say is that they have good network, and I think that's the crucial part. You get money somewhere else, you probably get coaching or positioning advice somewhere else or mentoring. But what you really need to look at is can they open the doors that they promised to open? And the best thing is to talk to the legacy teams and really question this. And if you find it difficult to get the right setup to talk to guys in the established real estate industry, you might consider going to one of these accelerators.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll touch on for a second and just say that it really depends on the industry in the end. I think in the property industry, given that it is such a closed, by and large industry, very big companies, there is a lot of value to joining something that gives you access. And it's, of course, you have to balance how much capital you're getting, how much time. You need to balance different things and how much you're giving away. But there's certainly value in them.
Okay, so I'll share, just on the financing side of things, I'll share a little bit of what I've seen. I've seen some companies that don't want venture capital. They want just strategic partnerships, strategic investment from real estate companies. Is this, they typically are people that come from the real estate sector. Is this something that you guys have come across?
Yeah, we help a lot of our startups to find real estate investors.
Okay.
And especially in France, the real estate investors are very much eager to invest in startups for good or bad reasons, but they want to exist in that field.
Okay.
So it's relatively easy to get one of those guys at your capital.
Okay.
Then the next question is it good for you, or is it actually going to affect your strategy or to block your future commercial development? Because if you have one of them, you might not have the others. So it depends on the business. It depends if you are in the core business of those guys or if you are on a side business.
Yep.
But obviously, it's a strong form of recognition. Again, if you are very early, it's a very good brand to have a leading established company who is supporting you.
And I guess a lot of those will come with client relationships or, housing stock or facilities that they can put you into.
And a lot of free marketing.
Yeah.
Because those guys are huge, so they will just promote you.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. I'll take the next one at the top. In the early stage, what's more important, the quality of technology or the problem being solved by the service provided?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
From our perspective, it's the problem, the quality of the problem that you're solving.
Yeah.
Because we all believe that at some point you can solve it with technology. The technology is there; it's just a matter of manpower and money. But you really need to find the right business model. And I think that's the tricky part.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's not a ton of votes for all these for the questions here. So I also don't want to favor the questions for those people that sorted out Slido. Are there any questions from the audience? Does anyone want to speak up and ask the question in real time? Any hands?
Sorry to harbour the point, but can we go back to the sweet spot in terms of each core organisation, so it's really concrete? What are you looking for in terms of when you get engaged, revenue and customers?
Okay, sure. So the question was coming back to the sweet spot of what each of us are looking for when we get engaged. And I can say concrete looks for seed stage investment and without sort of varying from the typical sort of venture scene, it would be that your revenues are kind of 20, 30K a month, that you are experiencing something like product market fit, so 10 to 20% growth rate in some metric, maybe not necessarily your main KPIs, but you've demonstrated a sense of having made this worthwhile for your users, and then of course that it's a team that that we believe will see, face, decide, and execute against the challenges that are coming down, that facing all startups. That's my point of view. I don't know if you guys want to add anything more to what you've already said.
At Impulse, we are early stage, no revenue or very limited revenue, and our only metric is the quality of the team and the capacity to collaborate with strategic partners.
We found it very difficult to have a specific sweet spot, because we want, at the end, our program benefits from very high quality teams. So what we did for our first batch is really talk to entrepreneurs, which we liked, where we found the team good, the idea good, and sometimes they didn't have any turnover and an MVP, and we took them on board. And there is one guy, he had a turnover of 500,000 euros, and he would not be the natural fit for Accelerator, but at the end he understood the benefit of having direct access to the big corporates, so he joined as well. So I'd say in general, a rule of thumb, we give 50,000 euros for 5 to 10% of a share, but if there's you said that is so interesting where we really can add value, I'd say let's see if we cannot make it happen.
Any other questions from the audience? Sure.
For Alex, Wescoatt has been developing in Berlin an incubator space that has been basically the flagship since it's successful. You focus yourself on PropTech.
You're saying it has not been successful. They have discontinued operation at the beginning of the year.
How you see VCs getting into corporate VCs getting into the space? Number one, and two, why is it that a second player, each player, has failed?
Okay. Your question has two parts.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question was, there was one program, an incubator run by the biggest platform, like letting and sales platform, Wescoatt, and it has discontinued operations at the beginning of the year. Why do we need a second program, I understand, and why don't other big players do the same?
The corporate VC, you are an investor, so it's
Yeah.
very different. Maybe they fail, you succeed.
So,
Why is that?
so the difference is, Wescoatt as a platform, they were looking for digital business models which were complementary to their core business. And as a consequence, they were limited in the scope of teams that they took on board, and B, they're at the moment in the process of really recalibrating their own business, because they are a PropTech, but they started, 15 years ago. So at the moment, they're an old company with a legacy technology, so they need to reinvent themselves. And they did not have the right focus in order to really help the teams. Why, and I've been asked that question when we attracted the partners for our multi-corporate program. Why would not everyone do his own program, as other industries do it? I mean, you see it, Coca-Cola has their own accelerator, anyone has it. I think the answer to this is, most of the founders are tech guys and not real estate experts. And as such, for them it's very hard to identify the companies that run these kind of programs and then be judged on whether they would be the right partner. And I don't know if you're familiar with German companies, but to give an example, the biggest one that owns 400,000 apartments is called Vonovia. They're listed on the stock exchange. How, as a tech guy, can I judge whether it's the right thing to go into bed with them instead of LEG or Deutsche Wohnen? This is something where you need an insider, and by definition, these tech guys are not an insider. And I think that's the benefit of a multi-corporate program, where you have the independence. You might play with one of the big ones, but you can also ask for contact to any other company, and you're independent. And if you talk to, I don't know, you say you're cooperating with Jones Lang, it'd be an interesting question for you. Your investments have Jones Lang kind of in their shareholders assembly through your fund.
Not true in my case, because JLL is not an investment partner; it's a corporate partner. But in my capacity, both with Concrete and with Seedcamp, I've talked with and worked with quite a few corporates, and there are a bunch of reasons why accelerators are not right for them, and so if they're going to a professional accelerator manager, I think they can probably see some success, but they need to go into that with eyes open of like, what is this trying to achieve? If they go into an accelerator program, own managed or outsourced, with the expectation that they're going to generate new revenue streams, 3-5 years down the line for their business, they're mistaken. That's not going to happen. Or if they are, it's just absolute hit it out of the park luck. the benefits that they accrue are much more in the exposure for their staff, right? So Jones Lang, they have the senior people are of an older generation, but they have a huge amount of millennial people, and they want to make sure that they are looked at as a place that is innovating in all the areas that the millennial generation wants to innovate. And so, their cooperation with me is one of many efforts that they're making to make sure that comes true for their team. I guess that would be my perspective on your question. Any other hands raised, questions? I guess I'll pick up on the patent question. How important is it for a startup to have patented technology or processes? Let me field this to Eyal, because you've looked at a range of companies, and at your stage, do you care deeply about patents?
So first of all, software and patents don't always really go well together. So I think it's IP 101. Now, if you do have something that is patented, it does create more value because you have intellectual property, and it could have a value. But I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think we see. It's interesting. So I'm from Israel originally. In Israel, a lot of the companies you see have real technological IP that is where the value lies. I think that many of the companies within the UK, the value lies more in the business model and in creating a business moat around it by providing better service, having better share of mind. So I think it's a very nice to have, and I love companies that have patent technology, that have something that gives them an additional level of protection. But it's absolutely it's in no shape or form a requirement.
Do you test the softwares and the codes for IP rights and open source?
So we do. Well, it's a technical question, but part of our disclosures, the founders need to say whether they have the right to use the code they're using. So if, for example, there's an open source code that the license requires the whole piece of software to be revealed, they will need to tell it to us in advance, right? So when we invest, again, we don't go line by line, but the founder's responsibility, and they'll be financially liable if they don't disclose things like having certain open source components in code.
Okay. Yeah.
Going on to my last question, what is your involvement in the later stages? Sorry. Going on from my last question, what's the involvement in the later stages in terms of round B, round C, but also what are your exit expectations? One of the things that I've noticed with some startups, for example, if they get involved with the VC might have a very different expectation to the startup, rather than Accelerator might have an expectation that's closer to the startup founders.
Well, I guess I would start with startups live from one funding round to the next, typically. So, sorry, just to reiterate the question, what are the expectations of a startup in terms of later stages and what they achieve, and how there's potentially a conflict between the goals of a VC or a startup? And I'll share that my observations are that startups live from funding round to funding round, and so that is, for better or for worse. I'd love to say all startups should just focus on their product. That turns out typically not to be 100% true. But I would say the question of involvement, hopefully there's no need for involvement. The startups are super successful and everybody goes home with a bunch of money. Again, not always the case, but let me hand it off to the guys here. Expectations on later rounds from startups or level of involvement thereafter?
I think we are in earlier rounds, so
Okay.
not so easy to decide.
Look, again, you asked quite a few questions there. Number one, time horizon. We're a bit different because we have more of evergreen-like capital, so we have holder time horizon if we need to. I think most VCs will have a 3 to 5 year hold in mind. But really, expectation and involvement, you live round to round, right? If the next round is a massive round and I'm no longer on the board, I'll be less involved, right? If the next round is a down round and suddenly I have 40% of the business, I'll be much more involved. So it really depends.
I would respond, for us, it's the first hurdle is the financing round after the 500-month batch. at demo day. So if we succeed that the next financing round is successful, that's already good. And then we set the fund up for a 5-year term. So our expectations would be that within that term, the company develops in such a way that a VC comes in and asks the small shareholders to get rid, clean the cap table.
So I would say what I've seen at Seed Camp, who's made, I don't know, 270 investments or something along those lines, is that because they begin at the early stage in a very kind of supportive role, they tend to maintain strong and kind of trusted relationships with the startups as they grow over time, whereas at the kind of Series A level, investment into startups that are ready for Series A funding is pretty competitive. Terms can be quite, there's a lot more downside protection in later stage investment, and so there can be a lot more tension between founder and investor at the later stages, and so I see, Seed Camp's probably biggest success would be TransferWise, and Reshma's kids are always playing with Tamit's kids, and they're always going to lunch together, right? They're still quite close, and so I guess that fosters a stronger relationship earlier on.
Taylor, there's one question that popped up, number 3 in the line, which I find really interesting.
Yes. So I'll just read that out for everyone. Not all startups will make it. What about nurturing founders who fail at their first attempt? So I've got an answer for that, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's probably an entrepreneur in the audience that thinks, well, should I do it? Yeah. And the answer is yes. I mean, we need all these entrepreneurs. So I really feel from the bottom of my heart that you should try, and if it fails, you do something else. And coming back to what we've said initially, it's about the team. And if we have seen teams where we said it doesn't matter what business model they run, they have just a great setup. They have a skills set that works anywhere. So if this idea fails for whatever reason, there's going to be another business model that we're going to introduce to them. Yes.
Great. So yeah, again, same at Seed Camp. Really strong support for founders who, it's broken their heart to send that email to our internal PPP list saying we're shutting down the company, or we're looking to sell, or something like that. Right? It happens, and I see those founders get tremendous support. Not just from the investor, but also from their class of other startups or other startups they don't even know. Everyone appreciates what a difficult thing that is to go through, and everyone appreciates there are forces far beyond your control that can sort of take you out. And still, they get tons of support and tons of encouragement to find another thing or come in and join a new startup. So I see a lot of that.
Has it ever happened that you finance the same founder twice with different business models?
Yep.
So that's the answer, sure.
Seen it happen several times. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to the audience. We have about 5 more minutes, so I'll use them if you guys would like. Any more questions from the audience? A lot of startups here. Surprised I'm not hearing more questions. Yep.
You're talking bottom one there.
Hi. So when it comes to Series A,
Speak closer.
have you guys got any kind of like rookie mistakes that people make a lot? Like, I would imagine your guys are kind of like the HR people, so you look at like a lot of CVs. You know what I mean? So you must see a lot of pitch decks, that kind of thing. So what's the biggest kind of rookie mistake people will make?
Did you, so you asked what the biggest rookie mistake people make were, but I couldn't hear the beginning of your question. Did you specifically say what was the biggest mistake at Series A, or biggest rookie mistake in pitch presentations generally?
I guess just when it comes to pitching.
Okay, pitch presentations generally. Eyal, can you take that first?
Sure. The most common mistake, which is an absolute pet peeve, but I'm sure it's not only mine, is before the pitch deck, is your email, right? If you're approaching me cold by email, make sure the email is personal, you know who you're writing, make no spelling mistakes, get my name right, and use the same font, size, and type throughout the document, right? It is small things, right? It shows me that you've thought about approaching me and just spearfishing and saying, "Dear Mr. Muhammad," I've seen this so many times. Like, here a company is from country. It just if you're not a native English speaker, have someone English speaker write the email for you. Again, I'm not a native English speaker, but those things are we're going to allergic for, and this will mean that your open rate will go very, very low. At pitches, I think disagreements, a discrepancy between founders would be quite massive red flags. Not knowing what you're talking about would be another red flag. Doesn't happen very often when the company's already making £1 million, but earlier on, you see it sometimes.
Yeah, in our case, we have a lot of technical guys who are mainly talking about techniques and not enough about client. So it's really about it's like the question that we had before, is it the technology or is it the problem that is solved? It's really how to focus on the problem and to monetize the problem. And many pitches fail at monetizing the problem because they don't know or because it's not prepared. And they keep showing that their technology is better, which may be the case, but we don't see the point.
He's focusing on the commercial part. I would go a step back and say you only have one chance for a first impression, and you're not gonna give all the information on the first pitch, so the other party will decide, yes, I'm gonna buy this product or I'm gonna give you financing. So the core is keep it simple, get him interested, so he approaches you after the pitch or whatever the conversation is, says, that's interesting, I want to learn more.
Yeah, I just remember one pitch I remember went very, very badly, and this was a doctor who was very, very passionate about his product. He did a product that was really, I wouldn't say life-saving, but life-changing in many, many ways. Very passionate, very great product, but the product was a B2C product. It was marketed to people, and he didn't know his numbers. He didn't know what his customer acquisition costs were for the product. This was the CEO of the company. And this for me is a cardinal sin, right? If you are a businessman, I don't care if you're a builder or a doctor, you need to know your business, your basic KPIs and business metrics to make your business tick. So I think it's basic. It happens very rarely, but that would be another red flag for me.
I guess I would add, having come from the product side, my background's all in product, and now working in VC. VCs have, I don't want to say they're formulaic, but there are boxes that need to be ticked. You need to know your customer acquisition number, regardless of what your business has done, PropTech or whatever it may be. And so having those details cold, I've seen, to Eyal's point, really knock a lot of people off. I now think we're out of time. We got time for one more? Yeah, sir.
Sure.
Let me get the mic to you so we can hear you.
Sorry, is it perceived, you hear me?
Yeah.
Is it perceived as a problem if a startup has 2 or 3 products on the go?
Like what? Like what?
Well, all in the same basic area, but one's focusing on virtualization or property management, while another's focusing on the lack of funding.
I would say for a start, so is it perceived as a problem if startups have more than one product on the go? I would say lack of focus is perceived as a problem. Having multiple products doesn't necessarily mean that. If you have a strong handle on what you're trying to learn out of each of them and what your expectations of them doing with each of them is clear, would be my point of view.
Same, unless you have 3 product managers and 3 salespeople for each of those products, different markets, it's focus, right? So if the products are highly complementary and there's a strategy of a Trojan horse with a B2C going to B2B, and you can tell a good story why you absolutely need to have these 3 products and how you're in control of them, great. Otherwise, it's a funny thing to see in a small startup.
You need to have the same core. Is it the same core technology or the same core team who is developing the 3 products? But you cannot have 3 startups within one.
So I would add focus is key, but I've seen examples where they have a 3D modeling of something, and they're also building the interface to the CAD systems. There are 2 business lines that run by different people, but they're owned by the same persons. So I'd say this works, but in general, the focus is important. There's one question that I would add to it when they said, in terms of teams, would you invest in solo founders, which goes in a similar direction? My clear answer is no. because we're looking for complementary teams, and as a one-man show, it is really, really hard to set the goals and fulfill them, because if you're the guy that can change the goals at any time, you're probably only doing the ones within the comfort zone, and founding and entrepreneurship is not only about comfort zone. I don't know how you guys see that, but you need to have more than just a business guy with a good business idea looking for developers and money. So that's my response.
So SeedCamp has and does, even though we recognize, to your point, it's very difficult to do it by yourself. And so we like to see that you have someone to talk to.
Yes, same. I think we do solo founders. The answer is yes, but we'd much, much rather see a strong management team, right? Two same businesses, one with a solo founder, one with a strong team. It's an easy choice.
Yeah. There are programs that do look for solo founders.
EF.
I don't know, Sandpit, EF, Cambro Perks, companies like that. They provide a massive support network that helps a solo founder and an idea turn that into a business.
Yeah, I guess my question was more in English. That last question, which is not mine, where a founder is filling a number of gaps in the same market.
Yeah.
Tech isn't the solution. Tech's just the means.
Yeah.
So we outsource all the tech.
So to come back to your question, I have seen examples of multiple approaches. So SeedCamp has a company called Reedsy. They make a product which is for writers, for basically budding authors that want to write books, create books, publish books. And so they need a whole suite of things to serve that market. They need a tool to allow you to write. They need a network of people that can do editing, design, so on and so forth. They need a publishing support infrastructure that allows you to basically get a book published. They need a set of tools that allows you to produce, and distribute books to Amazon and Apple Bookstore and everything. So they had to build all that because the business wouldn't work if they just had one. So it's possible. And they're quite successful having done all that, as painful as it was in the beginning. Great. I want to thank our panelists for sharing their thoughts with us. Alex and Tomas and Eyal, if you can all please give them a round of applause. Thanks everyone for listening.